If you want to guarantee that your social media marketing agency fails, do these 6 things. But first, if you don't know who I am, my name is Liam Casey. I've been a marketing agency owner for about 4.5 years now. I've achieved high multi-six figures in annual profit with my agency, and I'm here to simply share what I've learned along the way so that you can scale your agency quicker and make less of the mistakes that I made along the way. So firstly, why am I making a video about the 6 things that will guarantee that your agency fails? Well, I was inspired by a recent video that Alex Hermosi made on his channel. I can't remember what the number was. It was like 12, 20 or 30 things that will guarantee that your business fails. And I remember reading about Charlie Munger's inversion method, where you kind of take a problem or you take a situation and invert the question or invert the situation, and that will often reveal some kind of like unique insights or a different way about thinking about the problem to solve that area. And I think a lot of agency owners, and applying that to the agency business model, we're always thinking about what is the thing, the new thing, or the thing that we should be doing, or the new thing that we need to do that's going to solve whatever problem or bottleneck that we have in our agency. What's the new ad strategy that's going to improve results for our clients? What's the new client acquisition method that we need to implement that's going to help us increase client acquisition? What's the new kind of service that we should be offering, that if we offer that, that's going to help make it easier for us to run the business and easier for us to acquire clients. If we flip that and we just think about, well, what are the things that we shouldn't do, and what are the things that if we avoid would mean that we are successful, and that would mean we're significantly less likely to fail. And that is often a equally as good, sometimes a much better strategy if we only focus on the things that we should be avoiding. And that is going to help us run a successful agency and a successful business. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. I applied the inversion method and came up with the top 6 things. If you just avoid doing these things, you didn't focus on implementing any new strategies, doing anything fancy. If you just avoided doing these things, you're going to have a very successful agency. You're going to stick around for the long term. You're going to be more profitable. You're going to make a lot of money in this business model. So here they are. So the first thing is, don't track your sales data. If you want your agency to fail, this is a great thing to do. Don't track any of your sales data. Have absolutely no clue how you're acquiring any of your clients. Have no predictability on where your clients are coming from, and anything to do with how you're generating new revenue and bringing in new business. Obviously, client acquisition and creating sales and creating new business is the lifeblood of any business. And in an agency, obviously we need new clients, and we need some kind of predictable source of new clients, or at least if we don't have to, maybe you're in a model, or you're in a niche where you don't have to be at a huge scale for signing a bunch of new clients on a monthly basis, but you still need extreme clarity on what your figures are in terms of client acquisition. And so definitely, if you want your agency to fail, don't track your sales data. So what should we be tracking? This is something that I wish that I was doing ridiculously sooner, and I took way too long to take this seriously. And I wish that I was tracking this stuff a lot earlier, so that I had more data on my progression and on my numbers. And obviously in business, you can't make decisions on anything other than data. If you don't have data on a certain area of your business, then how can you make intelligent and productive decisions in that area of the business? Most people aren't tracking their sales to the extent that they should be, and sometimes they're completely ignoring core KPIs that could reveal a bottleneck that they don't even know that exists. And could be a big blind spot in your business. So I'm going to break down from purely looking at the sales performance in the agency, the numbers that I pay attention to on a monthly basis, and I review these numbers in 30-day cycles at the end of the month. And these are the KPIs and the figures that I make all of our decisions with regards to the sales performance of the company. So the first one is your call to close rate, and then also comparing that against your offer to close rate. So the distinction there, most people just think about their close rate in general. Your call to close rate is your close rate based on your close rate compared to the total amount of calls taken, whereas your offer to close rate is based on your close rate compared to the total amount of offers that were made on those calls. Because there may be a distinction between the amount of calls that were taken and the amount of people that were actually qualified to be eligible to be actually presented and offered your service. And so what that distinction and that discrepancy tells you is what is the quality of the calls we're actually generating from our prospecting and marketing efforts, because your offer to close rate is a much more accurate reflection of your real close rate, and can reveal either a poor performance from a sales professional if they're being too gun shy and they're not wanting to present your offer to people that actually would have been qualified, and that can reveal a bottleneck, or it can reveal a bottleneck in your marketing. showing you that that there's way too many people that you're scheduling in calls with that simply aren't qualified to work with you, and so you need to improve a marketing or a qualification bottleneck somewhere in your sales and marketing process. And so that is the first two metrics that we're tracking, is our call to close rate and our offer to close rate. Our next KPI is our upfront new cash collected. So we're looking at how much upfront new cash was actually collected into the business. This is not total cash collected. This is how much new revenue was actually generated, money paid, money in the bank within the month from new customers and new clients. That tells us how much money within the month was actually generated and collected from our sales and client acquisition efforts. That's a really obviously important number to know. Next is our new revenue generated based on our minimum client lifetime value. So this is a little bit more of a gray area tracking with the agency business model, because tracking this number in other business models where maybe you're selling like a high ticket done with you or coaching consulting offer where it's a 6 or 12K, consulting / like done with you coaching package, it's a lot more of it's just a very simple projection of the potential revenue that could be generated from that sale, because the package is worth only up to say 12K, for example. Whereas with an agency service, obviously we've got the variability of client retention and how long is a client going to retain. And so the way that I like to make this projection is simply basing it off the absolute bare minimum of what our client lifetime value will be based on the minimum contract value of a client that we would close. Say, for example, the absolute bare minimum of like one of the cheapest services that we sell at our agency for the minimum contract value, which is 3 months, is a $1,500 per month service on a 3-month minimum contract value, which means that is a minimum, absolute minimum, potential client value of $4,500. And so we can base our like new contracted revenue on a bare minimum of $4,500, and if a new client came on board within that month, then the new cash collected would be $1,500. And so we can look at that so that we can make a projection of the minimum revenue that's being generated from our marketing and sales efforts. Next is our total number of calls scheduled. We want to know within the last 30-day period, how many total calls did we have scheduled on the calendar, and how does that compare to the capacity of how many calls that we could have actually taken. For example, if we've got a sales rep that has a 80 to 100 call capacity that they could be taking within the month, obviously for us to be, maximizing the efficiency of that role and to be scaling at the capacity that we could be, we want to be filling up that 80 to 100 slot capacity as much as we possibly can. If we're getting 50 calls booked on the calendar, then we're not operating at the maximum efficiency that we could be. Or if you're taking your sales calls right now, you might know that, hey, I can be taking comfortably, 25 or even 30 sales calls per month, which is very comfortable. And if you didn't actually have that close to that amount of calls scheduled on the calendar, you know that that's a bottleneck that you could have easily had more calls taken, more potential clients acquired. Next is our number of calls showed. Obviously, there can be a big difference between how many calls were scheduled on the calendar and how many people actually showed up. And we need to be knowing, okay, what is our real show up rate? And that gives us an accurate reflection of what we're actually paying in terms of ad spend or in terms of labor to actually get someone to show up to a call. And we want to know how much does it cost us for someone to show up to a call. And then obviously based on that, total calls and people, amount of calls that showed up, then we look at our show rate. So those are the main KPIs that we're looking at to track our sales data, and that gives us a really accurate picture of if we're on track to hit the goals that we want to, and those numbers will reveal bottlenecks that you can start to work towards. So that is tracking your sales data. Next thing that you definitely should do if you want your agency to fail is don't track your retention and Ascension data. So this is about looking at, obviously, if you want to make sure that your agency fails, then disregard and pay no attention to how much money you're actually able to generate from the clients that you're acquiring. If you don't know what contributes to your clients staying longer and also you being able to earn more from your clients, then obviously that's a great way to make your agency fail. So here, the two, and this is again, like these are all things that I wish that I was drawn attention to significantly earlier on in my agency journey. But because you can just like not know certain things or just get lost kind of prioritizing different areas of the business and going in different directions. But the two main kind of metrics that we want to be optimizing for here is client lifetime value and then our average client value. So our client lifetime value is pretty much just made up of what is the total amount that we got paid from an average client through the lifetime that they were working with us. Pretty simple, just like what's the monthly retainer, how long did they stay with you, what is the total amount that we actually collected from a client, and then getting an accurate figure of, okay, what is the average total amount that we earn from the average client. And at the end of the day, that just gives us, if you can have, it takes a fair bit of data to get a meaningful amount of accuracy with what your average client value is. But once you've got real clarity around that, then you can start to have a lot more confidence and a lot more clarity in terms of how much you're willing to pay to acquire a client. Because once you've got really solid retention and you're retaining clients for 8, 12, 15 months in different niches and different types of service, your retention can be shorter or it can be significantly longer. Once you have that clarity around what your retention is and what your real earning per what your real total lifetime value is, then that again gives you so much more clarity around, okay, we know that we can spend X amount to acquire a client, and that is definitely worth it to for us to spend that amount to generate a sales call booked, for example. And so knowing your client lifetime value is ridiculously important, because obviously one of the things that you hear a lot is it's way easier to keep an existing client than get a new client, and your time is often significantly better spent looking at, okay, how can we improve our client experience? How can we improve our client results? How can we improve our client communication so that we're retaining clients longer, increasing our average client value? Because increasing your client retention by 3 months might be an extra $4,500, whereas if you're losing clients within a 3 to 4 month time horizon and you're having to pay a certain amount to acquire a client, your time allocation as a founder, as an agency owner, is significantly better spent over the long run, figuring out, okay, what do we need to do to retain our clients for 8, 12, 15 months, because that's going to yield a significantly better return on your time investment, as opposed to just focusing on client acquisition, for example. Next is our average client value. So the distinction here is your average client value isn't looking at the total amount earned from a client. This is looking at our monthly earning per client. So what is the average monthly income earned from an individual client in your agency? And so this kind of gets into the concept of looking at scaling vertically versus horizontally. We don't want to always just be thinking about what can we do to increase our client capacity and increase client acquisition, and how can we book more calls. We want to look at how can we actually increase the capacity and increase the amount that we're earning from our existing client base. And so this is just thinking about how can we add more value to our existing client base? What are the problems that show up for our existing clients once we solve the problems that we're already solving? And what do they need that we can help them with, where we can charge them more, but obviously we're also providing a significant amount of value from them? Because you would rather increase your average client value from $1,500 per month to $2,500 per month, and for you to be able to increase the revenue of your agency by, say, 80%. You don't need to bring on 80% more clients. You just need to convert more clients over to a larger service package and increase your average client value. It's way easier to keep an existing client than it is to get a new one. It's way easier to sell to your existing clients than it is to sell to a brand new person. If you've already got a client that you're working with, that they trust you with their business, that you've proven that you can get results for them and add value, how much easier is it going to be to sell them a new service that has alignment with their goals and what they need, than to sell new offers and new services to complete strangers and complete brand new people, where your cost to acquire a customer is going to be significantly higher. And so this is something that I see a lot of agency owners. You definitely don't want to add complexity to your agency and start offering too many services too early. But I think once you've crossed like the 30 to 50K per month in revenue mark, then you can start to scale horizontally and add more additional services and increase your average client value. And that's really important to focus on. So the next thing, if you want to guarantee that your agency fails, is don't run paid ads. Definitely don't run paid ads. That's a great way to make sure that you don't scale your agency. If you want to grow really, really slowly, if you want to have a really low volume of sales calls, then yeah, definitely don't run paid ads, because that's a really good way to do it. If you want to have unpredictable call volume as well, then yeah, don't run paid ads, because that's a great way to make sure that your agency fails. Don't get me wrong, you can get to a really good place, depending on the service, depending on the industry that you're in, scaling with completely organic methods, but you reach a ceiling at a certain point, or you just have to maintain methods that are more complex to maintain, when you could be focusing on a method that is a lot simpler, has a lot less maintenance, and has so many upsides to it. And so running paid ads is one of the easiest and the simplest ways to scale client acquisition predictably, as it allows you to achieve scale in terms of the volume of sales calls booked without the complexity of implementing a large scale content execution strategy, as well as without implementing any kind of labor intensive cold outreach strategies. With paid ads, once you've got the system built out, if you want to scale the amount of calls that you've got on the calendar, you just change the number on your ads manager and you get calls booked. Obviously that's oversimplifying it, but it is ridiculously more simple to scale up sales call volume with paid ads than any of these other methods. Also, one of the biggest differences between like organic methods and paid ads is that you are generating a significantly higher volume of inbound leads and inbound calls, as opposed to a lot of other methods like cold email, like cold organic outreach. You're going outbound to all of your prospects. This is just a completely different dynamic, which yields a significantly lower quality of prospects and calls booked, because every single call that you take where someone has come to you is obviously significantly more interested and motivated to potentially use your service and work with you than someone that you had to reach out to, generate the conversation and convince them to get on a call. And so the entire efficiency of your client acquisition system increases because the quality of your calls increases, therefore your closing rate increases, therefore your cost to acquire a client or customer decreases. Also, when you're running paid ads, it actually accelerates any other organic methods that you might be executing on in terms of any like organic content strategy that you might be trying to grow, like a YouTube channel or a Facebook group. That's going to grow ridiculously more quickly, and anything that you're already doing in those strategies are going to work better because you've got more inbound traffic being sent to those methods. And so it's a positive feedback loop, and it's a win-win when you've got paid ads dialed in. Thing number 4 to do if you want to guarantee that your agency fails is hire where it hurts. So if you want to be stressed out, if you want to get burnt out very quickly, then definitely do this. Hire where it hurts and just wait till fires come up, wait till problems come up, and only think about hiring for roles when things are hurting and things are breaking in the business. That's a great way to make sure the agency fails. That's a great way to make sure that you hate running the business, because you're going to be burnt out and stressed. So this is one of those pieces of advice that goes around very loosely. Is just like, how do you know what the next role to hire is for? People say like hire where it hurts. Just pay attention to where things are breaking down in the business and then look to hire there. But that's just a very, very bad piece of advice, because if you want to be scaling smoothly, then you want to be proactively predicting where the next area of the agency is going to break down and what the next bottleneck is going to be and where you need that next hire for, so that you're not waiting for something to break and waiting for things to get bad before you're having to scramble to solve that problem. Especially because whenever you're hiring for a new role, there's a lot of a learning curve that you have to go through as a business owner, with everything that goes along with hiring for a new role in terms of the talent acquisition process, in terms of the training and the recruiting process, and a transition period for training someone up in that new role. And so if you're hiring when it hurts and hiring where it hurts, then whatever problem that you're trying to solve, there's going to be like a 2 to 3 week period where it gets a lot worse before it gets a lot better, because you are trying to train up, you're trying to learn new skills, you're trying to train up a new team member, and you're going to be less efficient and effective at solving the problem that existed before it gets better, and that new role is going to be ready to solve that problem. And so what you want to be doing is predicting where the system in your agency is going to break down, hiring for that role proactively so that you can train them up and so that you can get them working in the agency before it's an issue, so that's a smooth transition to scaling whatever that area of the business up is. For example, if you are currently, say, just starting to run paid ads, you validated you're getting a good volume of inbound leads, and you know that the next bottleneck that's going to come up is sales call volume, and so you know that you're going to need an appointment setter. It might not be very urgent that you need that role right now, but you know that it's needed and that's going to come up in the future because that is the next biggest bottleneck. And so instead of waiting until you really, really need that high volume of sales calls and you depend on it, and that's just a very urgent thing breaking down the business, hire it when it's not 100% necessary right now, so that you can make a smooth transition into that role. Same with like a closer. Let's say that you're getting a really high volume of sales calls booked, you can't possibly take any more sales calls on, and then you only make that transition when you're at the absolute breaking point and you're really stressed with it and things are breaking down. That's the worst time to do it. Get it on when you can see that you're ramping up the volume of sales calls that are being booked, and you can see the trajectory of when you're going to get there, and start the process sooner so that the time is going to be better when you bring on that role. Same with like a media buyer type role to handle your fulfillment. If you're going through a period of scaling up significantly the volume of clients that you're bringing on board in your agency, then you would rather have a media buyer on board before it's getting to the point where your existing team can't handle the scale. Things are breaking down, clients aren't happy, you're ruining your reputation, and you've got a lot of bad client situations. That's definitely a lesson that we learned the hard way. We went through a period where we scaled up way too quickly, brought on too many clients in a short period of time, and didn't predict effectively the amount of capacity that we needed on our team to fulfill those clients to the level that they needed. And we had some situations where we didn't service our clients as effectively as we could have. And obviously that's a bad thing. And so you want to make sure that you are hiring ahead instead of hiring where it hurts. That's a really, really good piece of advice. Number 5 thing to do if you want to make sure the agency fails is figure it out yourself before hiring for help. This is kind of getting at you being the bottleneck for every kind of next step forward in the agency. And this is kind of a symptom of the entitled entrepreneur syndrome. And I see this, this is a really common one just for business owners in general, but this is something again that I struggle with a lot and I see a lot of agency owners having a lot of resistance with, but it's in general the tendency to feel the need to that you have to figure out the skill or the strategy to the full extent in the agency before hiring for help with that role or before bringing on a new team member to solve that thing. For example, let's say that you are looking to hire for a closer, a full-time closer in your role. You don't need to be the best at selling your service or be an expert at sales to get someone in to sell your service. I know that might I know that I had a lot of resistance to that, and I know that I know my service better than anyone. If there's anyone that's going to be able to sell my service, it's going to be me. So why would I want to give someone else the sales calls that I'm paying to generate or working hard to generate because they're going to have a lower closing rate than me, and then I'm going to be wasting money? No, there's a huge variety and a huge abundance of very talented people out there that are a lot better at different areas of business and thinking and intelligence than you. And if you're always trying to have to accumulate the knowledge and develop the skills and understand to the full extent every area in the business to be able to push the needle forward in that area or hire for that role, then your business is always only going to be the sum of the net positive of your brain and your mind. Whereas if you are hiring for roles and if you are bringing new talent and new people in that are better at certain areas, then you are going to have a company that produces the net positive of multiple people and multiple brains working collectively together, not being filtered through your one mind and strategy. And so get out of your own way. So it's that typical saying of it's the who, not the how. Who do you need to hire? Who can solve your problems? Not how can you figure it out and then hand it over to someone else. I definitely got stuck in a bit of a loop of feeling like I needed to figure everything out, systemize it, hand it over to someone, and me develop all the strategy. But no, you can hire very good, talented people to figure things out for you and to run whole departments of your business without you having to be very much involved. And lots of people are way better at a lot of things than you are. So ideally, we want to be spending our time on a very, very small collection of tasks that are the highest leverage things that we could be spending our time on that are most aligned with our skill sets, and just getting really good at those things and doing those things alone. So that's very broad and common advice, but it's again, we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. And that's a very, very good one. Lastly, number 6 is if you want to make sure that your agency fails, offer your services for cheap because it will be easier to get clients. So this is one that I see so many agency owners making the mistake of, and the justification of this is that it'll be easier to sign clients in the short term if we offer cheaper services. And so if you want to be left with no profit, if you want to be working with nightmare clients that are hard to get results for, that are really demanding, that make you hate running the business, then do this, because this is a great way to make that happen. So on the flip side, offering premium services is one of the simplest and almost cheat codes to making it easy to run this business model, because there is just such a long list of benefits of charging premium prices and working with premium clients. Because I don't know, people just don't connect those dots. You don't just charge premium prices for no reason, but you can deliver a service where the actual fulfillment and the amount of time spent and the application of the strategies that you're implementing aren't drastically different from what you do for a non-premium client versus a premium client, but simply just the type of client that you're fulfilling it for and the nature of how your service changes and the type of individual that you're fulfilling it for, it outputs a completely different service, it outputs a completely different result, and it outputs a completely different just experience for you as a business owner for the following reasons. So number 1, a person who consumes premium services by default, to be able to afford premium services, they are already a winner to a higher degree and they're already performing at a higher level. Someone that, for example, a real estate professional, because that's the niche that I know well, that is a brand new agent that's doing 0 to 1 new transactions and listings per month inconsistently, maybe doing between 8 to 15K per month in GCI. That's before tax and commission splits. And they're going to be a lot harder to get results for than an established veteran agent that's doing 50 to 100K per month in GCI, that's established in their market, has a reputation, has been doing it for 15 years. Because when you're working with that premium type of client, you're building on top of a much more solid foundation of something that's already working. And when you're adding something to something that's already working, its likelihood of success increases and its potential output of results increases. And so you're able to output more value from your service just simply by who you're serving and who you're working with, without you making your service better, without doing anything to increase the performance of your service itself. You're just working with better clients, which makes it easier to get results for, and you actually output more value, which by default makes your service worth more, because you're not having to do anything significantly different, but because of the type of client you're working with, it produces more value. So that is like just a big mindset shift. The next benefit of working with premium clients is that it's easier to get results for those types of clients, and they're easier to work with. I added like an image here, which gets thrown around a lot, but let me share my screen here. It's like $500 client. I just feel as though with this investment I'm about to make with you, that we should understand how our lives are about to change, and I need results, and I need results, and you need to bring them. I'm entrusting you with our livelihoods here. That's like the typical $500 client. A bit dramatic. $50,000 client, money sent, thanks, let me know when you're working on it. And that kind of just like encapsulates the difference between high ticket and low ticket. Not that you should like only be servicing high ticket clients, but that is kind of just like a very poetic summary of the dynamic. And so premium clients are less demanding, they're easier to work with, that makes running the agency more enjoyable, and they're easy to get results for, and they're more predictable to get results for, and you can charge them more just because of who they are, because you're outputting more value by default. So lots of reasons to serve premium clients and offer premium services. Next is that when you're charging premium prices, you've got more profit to work with, and so it's easier for you to afford to outsource more of your service and assemble your team, which makes it easier to grow. A really valuable video that I remember watching like a year and a half or 2 years ago from Chris Doe, where he was giving like sales and pricing strategies for like creative service providers, like for branding and logo designers, and pretty much he was saying that regardless of if you're doing all the work yourself or if you're trying to build an agency and outsource your work, you should always price you accordingly based on if you were outsourcing the work. So if you took your existing service, and if you're in a state in your agency where you don't have everything outsourced, take your pricing and look at, okay, for our current stack of deliverables and what we're currently doing for our clients, how much would we have to charge if I outsourced everything to do with the fulfillment, absolutely everything? How much would you have to charge for it to be worth your time to take on that project, where if you outsourced everything, you were still making enough profit for it to be worth your time? And if you start to look at the numbers and look at how much it actually costs to outsource an entire client, if there's not enough profit left over at your current pricing for you to be excited and for it to be worth your while to take on a project like that, then something needs to change. And so you need to price your services accordingly, so that if you were to outsource everything, then you actually have the option to. And then if you don't want to outsource everything and you want to keep the profit, then amazing, then you've got more profit to work with, and you can use that for reinvesting back into the business. But that's a really good way for thinking about your pricing for your services as well. So that's the 6 things. Don't track your client retention or Ascension data. Don't run paid ads. Hire where it hurts. Figure it out before hiring for help. Be your own bottleneck, and offer your services for cheap, because it will be easier to get clients. If you do all those 6 things, you're guaranteeing if your agency will fail. If you stop doing all of those things, and if you avoid doing all those things at all costs, then you're significantly increasing the likelihood that your agency is going to be successful. So that is it for this one. So the only thing I ask of you for this one is comment below. Just comment below this video. If you've got any specific questions about scaling your agency, any questions whatsoever, just leave a comment below this video, and I'm going to be making more valuable videos like this to answer your questions. And it's just a really good way for me to get ideas for what videos I should create for the channel. So if you've got any specific questions about the agency, anything that you'd like me to create a video on, leave a comment down below, or anything else that you'd like to share, and I'll make a video about it. But that's all. Thank you so much. Peace.